Football's new frontier or greed on steroids? Outrage abounds after the announcement of that 12 of Europe's most powerful clubs are going through with their decades-old threat to wrest power from the federations and start a North American-style closed league. No more danger of missing out on a spot in Europe the following season, and all but gone are those pesky minnows that could upset the established order. Is it for real this time? Where does the Super League leave the rest of professional football? What consequences? The rift draws attention to an unresolved contradiction of European sports. Teams try to turn a profit and answer to leagues that negotiate lucrative TV rights, but they also answer to federations which run as public services and whose members are overwhelmingly amateur. That sudden acceleration of the inequality gap between the elite and the muddling mid-table masses sounds awfully familiar in these times of globalization and of COVID. And by the way, most of the happy few in this instance happen to be currently swimming in red ink. Perhaps those debts at those big clubs won't matter if the Super League succeeds. Today in the France 24 debate, are the big clubs betraying the fans? Joining us, Simon Cooper, columnist at the Financial Times. Your books include Soccernomics, co-written with Stefan Szymanski. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
From Manchester, Kateryna Pietalovic, Associate Professor of Sports Law at Manchester Metropolitan University, the author of EU Sports Law and Breakaway Leagues in Football. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Craig Capitas, contributing editor at Quartz. How are you?
Okay, mon capitaine.
All right. And France 24 sports editor, Simon Harding. How are you?
Hi, Francois.
You're wearing a red tie.
For now.
For now. Simon, who knows a thing or two about the Red Devils of Manchester. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Fury aplenty from fans and former players. England great turned commentator Gary Lineker seizing on the sacking this Monday of Spurs manager Jose Mourinho to quip on Twitter, Jose Mourinho is fired. He's the first of the European Super League managers to lose their job. Wassim Cornet has more on what is a much more serious story for many fans.
A seismic shift in the world of football. 12 of Europe's most prolific clubs have announced they will be coming together to form a breakaway league as a direct competitor to the decades-old UEFA Champions League. The 12 founding members, which include top teams from England, Spain, and Italy, say they anticipate a further 3 teams will also join the Super League before it launches. Sources say France's Paris Saint-Germain and Germany's Bayern Munich had been approached but declined the offer. The late-night statement came as a shock to millions of fans who have expressed their anger and disappointment.
These clubs want to make football a luxury item. Football is not a luxury item. It is the most popular thing that exists, and it has to be popular again.
It totally flies in the face of the whole tradition of English football, which is that you achieve success on the field, not financial success.
UEFA, Europe's football governing body, is holding a crisis meeting this Monday as the organization ponders its next move. It has already released a statement saying it would consider both judicial and sporting measures to stop the project dead in its tracks. Politicians, too, have chimed in. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called the decision very damaging to football and has pledged to prevent the plans from going ahead.
So if the rest of the Premier League, by the way, was cancelled today, let's give you a show of the tables here. Chelsea would be out of the Champions League, instead qualified for Europa League. They're currently sitting in 5th place. Only the top 4 go to the Champions League. And as for Liverpool, Spurs, and Arsenal, Simon Harding, is this what this is all about? That these teams don't want to have to go through the hassle of having to qualify each year for the Champions League?
Well, if that's their intention, then it certainly goes against every single principle of football that I've grown up with and that as a sports journalist you love to report on, because football to me has always been about merit. If you win, you get a reward. If you lose, then you are punished for that. And the whole idea that 12 or 15, because it should be 15 teams that are founder clubs, have this entitlement to be there regardless of how they perform, that is essentially wrong. And that is, in my opinion, one of the facts that is annoying and angering so many people worldwide, particularly fans in England who view football as a working class sport, as a sport of the people. And this is a decision that goes against every single fan and fan association that has spoken out in the last 24 hours.
And would you really call into question your support for Manchester United?
I think you would have to, because this to me becomes Manchester United, the brand. It's got nothing to do with Manchester United. You know, can you really expect people who live in Altrincham and Timperley and Wythenshawe to go to Old Trafford to watch their team play Real Madrid? I don't see them doing that when they've abandoned 14 other teams, when they've risked the whole pyramid football format that's in place where teams are rewarded for this. It's just going to be 5,000 hospitality tickets sitting in Old Trafford, and that's what you lose. Football isn't a brand, Francois. Football is passion. It's love for a club.
Simon Cooper. We have a surfeit of Simons. Simon Cooper, you agree that it would be the end of football as we know it?
I agree that it would be disastrous, but I think many fans would go along. And I think if Manchester United play Real Madrid in this closed Super League, damaging as it would be to all other clubs, I think there would be a full Old Trafford to see that. I think that we've seen in the last 30 years of commercialised football that most fans like it. They vote with their feet. The stadiums have been full, millions watching on TV. So I don't think there would be a large number of fans switching off, but it would be ruin for all other clubs, for hundreds of European clubs. They would have almost no hope ever of reaching the top. And they would become the equivalent of minor league baseball teams that you don't really have any function. You don't really have any constituency anymore. And some of them would die.
You remember way back in 2019, Simon, when Ajax came tantalizingly close to reaching the final of the Champions League? You're saying that would be over?
I was there. Well, that would be almost impossible. I mean, as a fig leaf, that they plan to keep 5 places in this 20-team league open to other clubs. So potentially Ajax could qualify, and once every 10 years they might. Leicester might. Almost all clubs never ever would never even have a hope of it. And so even if Ajax or Leicester played in this league, Real Madrid, the founder clubs, every year would be racking up so much money that the new entrant would be unable to compete, would be played off the pitch. And so you cement an impossibility because of ever achieving. And the basic promise of football is that any club anywhere, if they're good, can win everything. I mean, that's what Celtic did as a kind of Glasgow neighbourhood team in 1967, what Ajax did as an Amsterdam neighbourhood team in the 70s. And already that's almost impossible. And now that becomes almost just imaginary, hallucinatory.
All right, so on the one hand, there's the lure of the local club that rises to the top. On the other, there's the fact that it's a sport that's gone global as globalization has gone global, if you will. Traditionalists taking to Twitter on the hashtag F24debate, like Jordan in India, he agrees with Simon Harding. It will definitely destroy the game of football, especially the domestic league. It's very shameful. I'm very ashamed for the club that I support. He didn't say which one it was. They're very greedy to join this chaotic nonsense. However, if you go to Bangkok at the La Montée coffee shop, Dalad, who, by the way, Simon, is also a Manchester United fan, she begs to differ.
เห็นด้วยนะคะถือว่าเป็นการที่แบบว่าฝึกซ้อมความแข็งแกร่งของทีมในพรีเมียร์ลีกเพิ่มแล้วก็เปิดโอกาสให้ทีมเล็กๆเนี่ยค่ะได้ทดสอบความแข็งแกร่งของตัวเองว่าแบบอย่างน้อยเราก็ได้มีโอกาสได้เจอทีมใหญ่ของท็อป5พวกพรีเมียร์ลีกอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะ
She's okay with the format there. Kareena Pietalovic, This is something that has been in gestation for a long while. We've had all this talk for years, these threats of a G14, this group of powerful European clubs. Why is it coming to a head right now?
Yes, you're right. This is an issue that is not new. It started in '98, if you remember, with Silvio Berlusconi's company, Media Partners International, making a proposal to the G14, the group of biggest European clubs, to break away. And this is when the UEFA reacted by changing the format of Champions League to accommodate these clubs, to give more space to the Big Five, or the clubs coming from the Big Five leagues. And this is when the clubs got an idea that they can, in fact, use a breakaway threat as a blackmail to get UEFA to basically do some concessions for them. And this is how they crawled their way all the way to the European governance, to the extent that they are running a show in a UEFA club competition committee. As far as what is changed now, this is indeed a completely different situation than we have seen in all the previous breakaway threats. This is now we have for the first time ever things like clubs quitting from the ECA, European Club Association. Now that is significant because ECA has been a vehicle for these clubs to control the decisions in the via the UEFA's club competition committee. They have a dominant space on that committee, and they have been running the show. Now, there is a part of me that still believes that this is maybe a better orchestrated hoax again. Maybe it is again some sort of a power play to force UEFA. This time it is about an argument, perhaps over the joint venture that they have or that they want to set up, the joint venture to manage all the commercial rights of the newly reformed Champions League, and that there is basically an issue as to who controls and who has the power to exploit these commercial rights and to what extent. And this is what the blow up is about, as I'm hearing. So this time it is indeed different. There's also, the clubs have also launched multiple lawsuits in several jurisdictions, reportedly. My guess is, without really knowing much about this, because there is no information really available at the moment, my guess is that they have filed for the interim order in Italy, in England and Spain, where the clubs come from, and they have asked the courts to prevent UEFA and FIFA from implementing the threats of banning them from domestic leagues. So now it has been taken to that level, but there is again a part of me that believes that perhaps, I mean, you can withdraw a lawsuit, that's easy, and if the clubs believe they can get back easily to the ECA, then there is no damage done, and they will have forced UEFA to do what they want.
But it is different this time. Craig Kapitis, not only is there the bank JP Morgan talking about financing, but there have also been, according to the Financial Times, discussions with potential broadcasters.
Yeah, this may come through. There's a long history here. I may be the only one on this panel tonight who was there 30 years ago at the World Cup in the United States when the big club owners first started talking to the NFL and Major League Baseball about monetizing these brands. Katerina mentioned something very interesting, the old media partners deal with Berlusconi. I spent weeks with those guys back in the day at the Wall Street Journal writing about that. We've been down this road before, ladies and gentlemen. It really started, and this history is important, it started in '96 with the Jean-Marc Bosman rule, which, by the way, they thought that the courts in Europe were going to say, UEFA can do whatever it wants. The courts did just the opposite. To remind you, the Bosman rule, clubs were now could take on as many foreign players as they wanted, and a player could transfer from his team to another team once his contract expired without having to pay a fee. Now, at the time, what we're hearing tonight, I reported the same thing back then. People were outraged. This was going to destroy soccer. football, excuse me. But the point is, as you say, Francois, this time around you have J.P. Morgan, a lot of money and a lot of banks and a hell of a lot of attorneys, as Katerina knows darn well. And these attorneys are going to come in here and they're going to flood this field because J.P. Morgan and these investment banks do not get behind this kind of deal unless they think they can win.
Katerina, is there who's got the upper hand legally speaking?
Impossible really to say and to give any yes or no answers. But at this point, I would give advantage definitely to UEFA. That is for many reasons. First of all, if the Super League clubs were serious about getting this project going and with as little friction as possible, they would have approached UEFA under Article 49 of UEFA statutes, which simply provides that they have to get prior authorization for anything like alternative competitions and leagues. And UEFA would then have to, and they would throw the ball to the UEFA side of the court. Now, UEFA would have to answer to that by giving them a clear, non-discriminatory, proportionate, and transparent set of criteria that they have to fulfill in order to, in fact, set up that league. And, then they would just have to comply with such criteria in order to do that. And legally, UEFA wouldn't be able to then set up the criteria so as to make it impossible for them to enter or to make it excessively difficult or anything like that. So the clubs would in fact throw the ball to the UEFA side of the court and they would be having the upper hand. Like this, they just decided to go. And that cannot be done.
I just want to add one important fact to this mix right now. We heard talk that President Macron of France and Prime Minister Johnson of the United Kingdom are outraged. Oh, there's gambling in Casablanca. These governments had the same outrage back in 1996. And I will give you the quote from Alistair Bell, who was the UEFA attorney at the time, trying to enforce, the old UEFA rule with Bosman. He said, what we intend to do is have UEFA and FIFA bring in the politicians for the singular purpose of compelling the EU to recognize that football has national character and should not be treated the same as every aspect of European economic life. He added, if you think that sport is just any other economic activity, then that's fine.
Right, it's not a good or a service like any other. Yeah. It's different. We're going to pick up on that point when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and a tsunami has hit the world of sports with this breakaway Super League concept that would take 12 or 15 of Europe's top clubs and effectively have them in a closed circuit, the way they have them for North American sports. We're talking about it with Simon Cooper, columnist at the Financial Times, whose books include Soccernomics. We're also with, from Manchester, Katerina Pietolovic, Associate Professor of Sports Law at Manchester Metropolitan University. Craig Kapitas, contributing editor at Quartz, and we are with France 24 sports editor Simon Harding. Pop quiz after reading the headlines in Italy. La Repubblica calling this the battle for European football, making it about Europe's sovereignty. Corriere della Sera, rich man's game. Guess which one is owned by the Agnellis, the same Agnellis who own Juventus, Simon Harding. You see the difference in the way it's spun. After the initial shock, there's going to be, as we just heard just before the break, the battle of the lawyers, but also a public relations battle.
A public relations battle, but I personally don't think it needs to even go that far. I think it's the players and managers, if they have a say, then it could stop or make the project immediately. We've heard Thomas Tuchel of Chelsea say that he's an employee and that he will trust his club to make the best decisions. But I find it very hard to believe that if someone like Pep Guardiola tells Manchester City, if you do this, I'll resign, or Jurgen Klopp, who's always said he's a man of the people and who's always said that he is against a Super League, says to Liverpool he'll resign, you risk losing the entire fan base. Also, UEFA, as we've mentioned, Kareena was saying with the courts, but UEFA have also threatened players who take part. They won't play in the Euros this summer. They won't play in the World Cup.
There's talk, according to one Danish member of UEFA, that perhaps Friday they'll vote to kick out the 3 of the 4 semi-finalists for the Champions League.
The Champions League, but also from the Europa League, the
Is
Premier
that a serious
League.
threat?
I think it can be, because they are intent on stopping this in every way they can.
They better have a lot of lawyers, and they better have a lot of money, because you're breaking so many contracts by doing that. This will be litigated. I repeat, you have JP Morgan and boxcar loads of attorneys with more money than they know what to do with, who will come in here and take on UEFA and all of these leagues and FIFA in the same way they did back with the Bosman rule.
Which is why it will come down to the players and managers and the heart and soul of these football clubs. Can you imagine a European Championships where Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't play for Portugal if this threat goes through? Can you imagine England without Harry Kane, France without Paul Pogba? Like, you know, these are things where the players themselves are going to have to take a stand, make decisions and decide whether or not they want to be part of such a project.
Simon Cooper, how's it looking on that score?
I think the players will be told by their agents, look, there's going to be 15 or 20 very, very rich clubs. Nobody else is going to have any significant money, because nobody's going to care about a Premier League without United and Liverpool and so on. So which side do you want to be on? You want to be with the rich clubs. And in the end, the essential elements of football are not UEFA, not FIFA. We could have football without them. The essential elements are the big clubs. You know, you can't have English football without Man U and Liverpool. And the players. People want to watch a World Cup with, you know, people like Cristiano Ronaldo and Leo Messi in them. Otherwise, what's the point? And so the big clubs and the players have the game over a barrel. What they choose to do in the end will happen. And they are the only thing that is not expendable.
They're the only things you're saying that are not expendable. Just on that score.
Expendable, yeah. I mean, look, you know, Francois, you and I could set up an association and run European football. As long as Messi and Cristiano were in it, people would watch it.
All right, but
if UEFA runs something
there
without
is an
Cristiano,
example.
Messi and all the others, nobody will care.
There is an example. Remember back in 2005, there were Manchester United fans outraged at the sale of the club to American billionaire Malcolm Glazer. They founded this amateur football club to restore traditional values, FC United. To this day, they still have a loyal following and practice their trade in the equivalent of the 7th division. The story of FC United, is that just a quirky anecdote for you, Simon Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, you know, people were outraged, United had sold its soul, etc. But Old Trafford was full every week until the pandemic broke out. Fans very largely will stick with the big players and the big teams. I don't believe that fans at heart are deeply anti-commercial. I think this league would be shocking. It would be horrible, but I think it would succeed.
And the women also get their own Super League as part of this deal. How's that for a sweetener?
Well, they say they might do it. They haven't yet. It's
they'll
still
do it.
fuzzy on the details on that.
They'll come through with it.
It's a confirmed project there.
It is a confirmed project.
Yeah.
Katerina Pietlovic, we're speaking a lot about Manchester. You happen to be sitting there. Your thoughts on this about, because you just heard Simon, who is an impassioned Red Devils fan, making this clarion call. Do you agree with Simon Cooper that in the end, well, people will watch it?
He's quoted a historical event which kind of showed that, yes, they will. And, perhaps the Super League is relying on the fact that fans, memory is short. On the other hand, the Super League has alienated now pretty much every single stakeholder in European football, and that hasn't really happened before. This is bigger, probably, than just the sale of the club to somebody. We are seeing something unprecedented. It is quite a different situation. So we don't know really what is going to happen. But one thing is for sure, and that is that Super League is taking an enormous massive legal, practical, and financial risk with this project. Even though they have a backing of somebody like JP Morgan, that doesn't guarantee the success, and especially doesn't guarantee the legal success. So my surprise is that they have done this now that UEFA has reformed Champions League in a way to suit every single interest that they could possibly have. Now they have done this when the governance was in their hands, the way that they wanted it, and they could perhaps gain even more power in the new Champions League. I'm not really sure why they're doing this. Especially significant fact is that French and German clubs have not joined this project. So we are talking about Super League that has 3 countries involved. What kind of Super League is that?
Why have the French and the Germans not joined? Why haven't Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain?
Well, German clubs simply are owned 51% by fans. There's a 50% plus 1% rule, which means that fans control the clubs, and fans, as we've heard, are universally opposed to this. Paris Saint-Germain themselves are very involved with the UEFA, so they've clearly said from the very beginning that they won't be taken apart. But I think we're missing a very important point here. We talked about, soaring, the shares soaring of Manchester and Juventus, but Lyon shares dropped today. What happens to the rest of football? Football is not just these 12 super clubs. Football is the most popular sport in the world. It's the most popular sport in many countries. So what happens to our clubs in the 3rd and 4th division going to survive without money? 7 months ago, Francois, we were saying that 30% of clubs worldwide were at risk of extinction because of the pandemic. And now these 12 clubs with 8 foreign owners who have no ties traditionally to the history or anything are trying to monetize on the brand names. I agree with
They've
Simon.
already done it.
Manchester
That's
United
done.
will
That's
succeed.
a done deal. That deal was done decades ago.
Right, but you heard Simon Cooper in part 1 of our discussion saying how this relegates the rest of football to the status of minor league baseball.
Observing this from the outside, not a fan of any one of your teams, so what? No fortress is so strong that money cannot take it. And that's what's going on here.
Well, that's the problem. I think that's the problem.
No, but the problem was created by the fans and the governments years ago when the governments had promised UEFA, on the record right here, an old Wall Street Journal from the archives saying that they were going to go in and legislate, put wording in the Treaty of Rome to ring fence football. So this wouldn't happen. They did just the opposite. The governments allowed majority foreign money to come in and take over the shares, a big problem. And they didn't do what the Germans did, which was smart, which is what the Green Bay Packers did in the NFL. The fans own the majority shares of the team. This whole idea that there is this local community distinction that we hear all about the great Manchester United or the Liverpools or the Tottenham Hotspurs or the Arsenals, this community-based stuff, nonsense. If that had been the case years ago, the fans would have gotten the financing. And I'm told that some of them could. I'm not really sure, but I was told that at the time they could have created a Green Bay Packers type of structure. And they didn't, and the governments didn't support them.
Simon Cooper, could it still be possible that fans do a hostile takeover?
It's very hard. I mean, look, Craig is right that legally, financially, the fans don't own the clubs. Morally, though, the fans are the club. What is Manchester United? Most fans and players and coaches and people in the game would say it's a community organization that has existed for 120 odd years to serve its community, and its purpose is that and is not money making. So what you have is this problem where the kind of moral function of the club and the legal business function of the club are completely at loggerheads. It's now very hard for clubs to buy these fans because the amounts of money involved are so large. There were attempts by very rich Manchester United fans to put together enough money to buy out the Glazers. But you'd need something at the time, this is 10 years ago, like £2 billion. It's very hard to find fans who can put all that together. And so the clubs fall into the hands of the world's handful of billionaires, most of whom do not come from the countries concerned.
And but we're talking about red ink a minute ago. The debt among the big clubs, Simon, is huge. Barcelona currently holds the crown, nearly 1.2 billion euros.
Yeah.
Not far behind, though, the
I'm
Spurs.
not concerned about any of that.
Why is that? Look at these numbers. They're huge.
Yeah.
Debt equity.
Well, Spurs is mostly because they built a stadium. I mean, if you take out a mortgage on a flat, you will have a lot of debt. But you also have an asset and you have a lot of time to pay it back. Spurs have been around for over a century. They're not going to disappear anytime soon. So they don't really have trouble paying back the mortgage. Football, for all its history, most clubs have been loss-making. And they survive because the function isn't to make a profit. The function is more or less to be solvent. Creditors get wiped out. Never lend any money to a football club because they will survive and you will not get your money back. And so these debts are not existential. COVID, as you say, has plunged clubs into debt. What do you think, World War II did? In the past, there have been all sorts of financial disasters, depressions, world wars, corrupt chairmen hitting football clubs. And pretty much every single club in England that existed 100 years ago is still here. Football clubs almost never go bankrupt, and they won't go bankrupt during COVID. That is not the problem.
So what you're saying is you agree with Catalina that the reason why this is happening now is because UEFA didn't bow down enough when it came to showing them more of the money when it came to the rights for the revamped Champions League?
I think the reason it's happening now, and as Kareena says, and as Craig says, it's been going a long time, the reason it's happening now is football clubs are short of money and they're all a bit anxious. And the big clubs think, well, we'll take this money from JP Morgan and we'll suddenly be financially really healthy. And the smaller clubs are being told by the breakaway clubs, look, we'll give you hundreds of millions total. We'll kind of keep you afloat. So you will sacrifice all your sporting ambitions, but all of you are in a massive hole because of COVID. You don't have any spectators in the stadiums. And so we'll bung you some cash and you'll let us break away in Europe and you'll let us continue to play in our domestic leagues. Because all these clubs, Manchester United, Barcelona, their bottom line is they want to stay in the domestic league. And so they are essentially going to bribe the smaller clubs with money to let them stay in the domestic leagues. That's the bet they're making, and it's a very plausible one.
The lesson here is never bring on a former Wall Street Journal staff reporter and someone from the Financial Times to discuss football, because this is the reality. Simon is absolutely correct here. This whole thing about debt looks really good, fans get upset about it. Debt is made to be bought and sold. As long as you can pay the interest on the principal, you're fine. You just roll it over. And that's what people like the Glaziers and the Cronkies and all these other foreigners who own these clubs is what they do. And for them, it's a real estate investment. Do you think Kroenke is using any of his money to buy Arsenal, any decent players? No, he's not. And you see this, trickling down. The fans, as they say, what's the expression you get? The bums will go to the stadium. They'll sit in the stadium. Bums in the stands. They're going to fill the place. And they're still going to be playing in their local leagues, their premier leagues, because that's what the local people want.
Let's pick up on that point. Simon Cooper mentioning how they want to be able to stay in the domestic leagues. First of all, why? Is this just so they can get some match training? Is that the reasoning you see, Simon Arning?
I don't understand how they're going to be able to play.
And what does it do for institutions like the FA Cup? Does it mean that they'll still be taking part in it?
Well, the FA Cup would be a risk. I mean, the EFL Cup is already a risk as it stands. There are talks of scrapping that. I certainly agree in part that people will potentially still go. The Premier League are meeting tomorrow, I believe it is, the 14 other clubs to decide on sanctions. We've heard diehard fans like Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville, Mika Richards, Jamie Carragher say we want heavy sanctions, strip them of points, strip them of titles. On our colleagues at Sky Sports not so long ago said that there'd been a leak with an executive board member from an unnamed club who said the owners couldn't care less. And I agree. And they say if we leave the Premier League, all right, fine. That means our players will have more time to play in our Super League. And apparently the quote from this board member, which is unconfirmed, of course, is that their job is not to safeguard the future of football, it's to drive their business. So I agree with everything that Craig has said. I agree that everything that Simon said, perhaps my view and the emotional view is certainly innocent and naive. But I think this is where this debate is going to. There is this real aspect. And this is what is so frightening, Francois, is that this is so real now, that for all the people who hold this football so dear to them, the traditions of it, that this could become a reality where you don't have your traditions anymore, where it just becomes this machine. And that is why this time it's provoked such a reaction, that there is that very possible reality that it could go on.
But this Super League, is it any different from when the NBA rethought the way it branded itself on the global stage and turned into this great global brand?
Well, I'm no expert on the NBA, so unfortunately I won't be able to comment on that. I would say that the franchise system, again, goes against the values of football, and this might, again, be a naive and innocent view, but when there is no promotion, when there is no relegation, that is the essence of football.
It's not. Listen, I don't think it's naive. This is sports. It's not naive.
Let me bring in Katerina on this. Go on, Katerina.
Yeah. So I've been just dying to say a few words on the legal point of view of everything that you've been just discussing. Basically, it's time for European regulator, namely the EU Commission, to step in. And when they assess the legal aspects of the case, it's not going to be just like any other industry, no, because legally, they will not just apply competition law, but they will also take into account things like cultural, educational, societal values of football. And they have duty under Article 165 of the treaty that says that they have to take into account the promotion of fairness and openness in sporting competitions. So they are hinting at promotion and relegation that has to exist, and cooperation between bodies responsible for sports. So there are aspects that go beyond pure business, pure money, pure clubs are of course concerned commercially for their success, but that is their prerogative, and that is their that is what their priority is. On the other hand, you have governing body that has to take care of the entire sport and that has mandates to protect public interests. So whatever Super League is set or not set up, and whatever other alternative leagues show up, the only way for them to succeed is to fully accept the regulatory authority of UEFA. And
this is part of the irony. Let's listen to the British Prime Minister. At least in these times of Brexit acrimony, Boris Johnson's argument against the Super League puts him squarely on the same side as the leaders of France, Italy, Spain, and the European Union.
These clubs are not just great global brands. Of course, they're great global brands. They're also clubs that have originated historically from their towns, from their cities, from their local communities. They should have a link with those fans and with the fan base in those communities. So it is very, very important that continues to be the case. I don't like the look of these proposals, and we'll be consulting about what we can do.
The cultural exception, Simon Cooper. This is again. It's fascinating to see that this is reconciling Boris Johnson and the European Union.
Yeah, I mean, politicians understand that fans, and nearly half the European population, I think, says that they like football. Fans don't see football as a business. And that's really the essential underlying question that we're dealing with here. Is it just a business, or is it something more than that? And almost everyone who cares about football, almost anyone who gives any of their money to football would say it's more than that. But the people who run the club say it's a business.
Alistair Bell, who was UEFA's attorney at the time, back in '96, said on the record that they were going to try and they were going to go to the politicians and get this included in the Treaty of Rome, what Katrina was just talking about, this great cultural exception. And they didn't do it.
Katerina, one final word, because we're out of time.
All right. Well, there is right now, it's not an exception, but it is something that they have to take into account when enforcing the law. So that it is not going to be just business, because in European law and policy, sport is more than just a business, and it is recognized as such. So definitely these other values will play part.
Didn't play a part in the Bosman rule.
All right, maybe times have changed. We shall see.
Actually, it has.
All right. It would make Simon Harding happy, that's for sure. I want to thank Simon. I want to thank Simon Cooper. I want to thank Katerina Pietlovic for being with us from Manchester. Craig Kapitas, thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.